Welcome to another episode of Sanford Says. My name is Lisa Holder, Communications Officer for the City of Sanford, and I have a great special guest with me today. His name is Lonnie Groot, and Lonnie is the Assistant City Attorney. Welcome to Sanford Says, Lonnie.
It's good to be here, Lisa.
And today we're going to be talking about the City Code and what that entails. The title of this episode is City Code 101, and it is the foundation for basically everything. And Lonnie is an expert in this field, and he's here to share with us the information about that. Lonnie, where should we start with this big, broad topic?
Well, it is a big, broad topic, and probably the best place to start is, and it may sound a little esoteric, but let's think of our state or federal government, okay? And you have a Congress at the federal level, and a legislature at the state level, and they're in session a lot, and they pass a lot of bills. Let's just talk about the Florida legislature. Florida legislature, whose session just ended, they pass hundreds of bills every session, which amends all sorts of statutes. So imagine that you were interested in a particular subject, and the first time that was ever passed as a law in the legislature was, let's say, 1970, which is half a century ago. Not that long ago, but half a century ago. Now, let's say it was about traffic, driver's licenses, or something like that. And now you wanted to see what the current law was. Well, if you had to go back to 1970 and they'll go every year to see what the legislature had done, and then stack up all the times that they changed the original law in 1970, you might have a stack a foot and a half high. And you would have to compare the language from year to year to year to year to year to understand what the legislature said and what the law today was about that subject. That's why you have statutes. Because what the statutes do is every year the Florida legislature has a body, a part of the legislature that puts together all those statutes and all the changes year to year to year. So all you have to do is look at that volume to see what the law is. That's called the statutes.
Right, so you don't have to go back, like you said, and do all that research. It's there for you.
It's there for you, so you
Right.
don't have to figure out. You may want to see what's changed over time, but that's called legislative research.
Right.
And you go back and say, well, what did they do and why did they do it? And you might want to look at that for arguing in a court, arguing to change the law. Who knows what you might, but you might want to see what the history was. And you can go back and figure it out.
Yeah.
But most people just want to see what the law is right now. Now, city codes and county codes are very similar, except that those legislative bodies are in existence year-round. The Florida legislature meets for 60 days a year. The city commission meets year-round, and it passes ordinances from time to time. And sometimes it will change the ordinances about things like noise, about things like bars
art.
downtown,
Or public art.
Public art, and you would want to see what the changes were, maybe for research purposes, but like most people, like I just said, you want to see, well, what's the law about noise today? That's why you look at the city code.
Okay.
Because that shows you what all those ordinances compiled with all the changes, the additions, the edits, the deletions, what the law is today. That's what the code is, so you don't have to do all that research. And there's dangers in just operating with codes, too. I'll tell you a quick example.
Mm-hmm.
When I worked for Seminole County, at the county attorney's office, I got a call one day with an irate attorney saying, I can't get a straight answer from county staff. I go to planning and they tell me this. I go to the development review, they tell me something totally different, and it's all about the same subject, wetlands. I need to tell my client what they need to do. So I said, well, that sounds strange. So I said, give me 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I went downstairs to development review and I said, what are you doing about wetlands regulation? They said, well, it's right in the ordinance. And I
Right.
acted like I was stupid. It's right in the ordinance. I said, let me see the ordinance. And they showed me the ordinance. So I said, would you come with me for a couple of minutes? And we went to the third floor, to planning. And I said, what do you guys do about regulating wetlands? They said, it's in the ordinance.
Right.
I said, let me see the ordinance. And so I looked at the two ordinances, the one that was being applied on the second floor and the one that was being applied on the third floor. They weren't applying the same ordinances.
I see.
They just had the ordinance. They said, oh, that's the wetlands ordinance. They didn't look at the changes over time and look in the county code to see what the current law was. That's why
Okay.
codes are so valuable.
And that's where you call it, there's a terminology for it, codify.
Codification, codify, you codify an ordinance, and the assembly of the ordinances is the codification of all the ordinances.
Right. And I experienced that too personally here. So now I understand. And that's why we're having this podcast episode.
So that, you can, like I said, you can look at the history, but that's a matter of research. And in the code, there's usually a section, a little note at the bottom of each section that says history, and it'll say ordinance number such and such, and give you a year or a section from the ordinance or something like that. The statutes do the same thing.
Okay. And so if someone did want to find out about looking up this information, then everything is digitized now.
You can buy a printed copy of a code.
And you
But
could do
then
that
if it
too.
changes, you have to buy the supplement and put it
Okay.
together yourself.
Okay.
So the easiest way and this is for all 400 cities in the state and 67 counties in the state, is to go to the digitized codification. Most of them are done through an organization called Municode, which is the Municipal Code Corporation. It's been in effect in existence since 1950s, early 50s. And it codifies codes not just in Florida, but throughout the nation. It's not the only codification company in the nation, but it's the largest and most known, particularly in Florida.
And we use that here at Sanford.
That's what's important, is
Right.
that Sanford uses Municode to codify its code, in both printed form and digital form, which is I don't use a printed code anymore. I
Yeah.
go straight to Municode on the website.
Lonnie, could you just share the example? Like, for instance, you're at a commission meeting, there is a change, or even before that, I guess there's something has to be changed. They contact legal, right? And then the
Well,
legal.
the way it works, is if there's a change, such as public art. There was a public art ordinance, which was the initial enactment of the public art provisions for the city of Sanford. That ordinance was then put into code, the city code, and to change it, you would amend the code, and you would have an ordinance, another ordinance, but it would amend only those portions of the prior ordinance as codified that are needed to be amended. So if you wanted to change 20 days to 30 days, you would just amend that one provision, striking 20 and inserting 30.
Okay. And then it goes to the city commission.
And then the city commission is the only body under the city charter that has legislative powers. It is the legislative branch of city government, and it enacts ordinances as laws. Ordinances are laws of a local nature.
Okay. And so they approve it. Do they have, if you have changes or amendments, does that have to go through 2 readings also?
Yes, city government, city law requires that ordinances be read 2 times by title before they can be passed. Counties, just as an aside, they have to have no readings. You don't read the title if you go to a city commission meeting, you'll see the city attorney is typically the one who reads the title of the ordinance. You won't see that at the county commission
Is
meeting.
that right? Is that same verbiage that's read over and over? Like, there could be 5 or 6
Yep. That's it.
and that's because of we as a
State law
municipality.
requires
Oh, it's
it.
state law, but the county doesn't have to do that.
State law doesn't require the county to read the title.
And when you mean title, it's a little bit of a like 3
Oh, yeah,
sentence. It's
title.
not like A, B, C, D, and you're done,
And
right?
unlike the the Florida legislature, where they read laws by title. It's required constitutionally. You can waive it. And so you can, if you go to the last day of the legislative session, is it's just a hodgepodge. Benjamin Franklin said there's two things you don't want to watch being made. One is sausage, and the other is laws. And the last day of the legislative session in every state of the union, it is they're just ramming bills through at the end. And so if the poor clerk had to read the title every time, it would be even
longer
too. So you'll see things said very, very fast, which is basically, waive by title, waive by title,
Okay.
waive reading of the title. So
like at the end of those car commercials when they have to read those, read that fast. But interesting. And so you wonder, and now I've learned something, because if you come to a city commission meeting, you will see the city attorney. You'll hear him also read this same language. It's like two sentences. And then I know the city manager says something also.
The way it typically works is the mayor says, city attorney, will you read the ordinance by title? The city attorney reads the ordinance by title. Then the city manager will typically be the one who then does a brief summary of what is being asked for the city commission to do.
It's a lot of, it's legal, but it's a lot of pomp and circumstance too.
Yeah.
But so then after that, though, what's the step? So the commission meeting's over. They pass the amendment or then what happens
the
after?
The ordinance gets enacted. The city clerk gets all the right signatures, and then she, and it's Seminole County and City of Sanford, it's a she, Tracy Houchin. She will then send the ordinance to Municode, because we paid for them to do the codification, and they will take the ordinance and look at the parts that need to be put into the code, and then make the changes that need to be made if there was existing language that's being amended, modified, or put in the new language if it's all new language. And then that will be put into the digitized city code online, and then you have an updated code.
So typically, what's the time frame when an ordinance gets passed that it should be online if someone is interested in a topic?
Within a month, for sure.
Okay.
And that's a good question for when citizens want to see the code. What they should do, and I could give you the exact link, but the easiest way is just to Google Municode Sanford.
Okay.
MUNICODE, and then the city Sanford.
Okay.
And you will get you'll hit the ability to link the code. And once you hit that, you'll get a page that says view what's changed or browse table of contents. You hit browse table of contents, and away you go. You will then be at the city charter, which is the very first thing in the code.
It's our constitution.
It's our constitution. The city charter is the constitution of the city. That doesn't change very often. The reason it doesn't change very often is because it requires a vote by the electorate, the citizens of Sanford, to change the city charter. It's very unusual for an ordinance to be subject to a referendum vote, but virtually all amendments to the city charter
is a referendum vote. Okay.
So like when the city charter, there was a proposal to amend the city charter to allow the city commission to go from 4 to 6 city commission districts. That went before the voters, and they passed it. Just by the way, it doesn't say there will be 6 city commissioners. It allows the city commission by ordinance to provide for 6 city commissioners.
And so when you talk about changes to our charter, these are items that are monumental, basically, or not necessarily.
No, very yeah. There was one that failed years ago. I don't know if you were here or not, Lisa. That took away the requirement, would have repealed the requirements that the city manager be a resident of the city.
I think that was before
your time, but Tom George had been the acting city manager for a long while, and there was an interest and having him continue to be city manager, and he's not a resident of Sanford and was not going to be, and he didn't want to do what some folks do, which is kind of fake it, where they rent a home
Oh.
This has happened throughout the state. They rent a home sort of in
Okay.
the city, but their real home somewhere else. So he's a very honest person, didn't want to do that, and so the matter was presented to the voters, and they rejected it. They want, which is
Right.
pretty normal.
Yeah.
Most cities and counties want to have their city or county manager a resident of
Exactly.
Actually, some cities have and counties have requirement that department directors are residents.
Is that right?
That's usually a very controversial thing too, though.
Okay.
But there's another way to get to the city code, and that is to go to the city's website, go to the city clerk's web page, and then the city clerk has a button that says codes and ordinances. If you click that, it's going to direct you to Municode.
Right.
But it's another way to get there.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to know. I mean, the information is there in black and white. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it when you read the code or the ordinances. And if you're questioning items or your neighbor's asking you something and you don't understand or you don't know, that's a good way to, you can call the city, of course, and ask staff and the elected officials, but you can also do it yourself and
well, you
go.
can do it yourself, and quite frankly, and I love our staff, but there's times I've been given the wrong information by other jurisdictions. I've been given the wrong code sections by other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
I even went to a jurisdiction one time, was going to appear at a hearing, and the staff report was written in one way, and it talked about this code provision. Well, they had a computer in the lobby for citizens, and what I did is I printed out a copy of what the code said online.
Right.
20 feet from the front door of their chambers.
Right.
And when I argued, I said, well, this is really interesting what your staff report says, but I just printed out your city code 20 feet from here.
Yeah.
And it's not the same thing.
Yeah. So how do you know that, Lonnie? Like, how can you know that the Municode has been updated? How would you know that as a citizen? That if you
read it, and if it doesn't sound right to what your understanding of the code was, well, you inquire, and you can always call the clerk, and you can always look down at the history at the very bottom of each section and say, well, I know this was amended in 2020, and yet this code doesn't show that amendment's in here.
Right.
So you can citizens have to be active. That's something you and I always preach a lot. And if you read the code, not just to see if it's accurate, read to see if you like it.
Yeah.
And if you don't, call your city commissioner and say, why can't we have this, that, or the other as opposed to what is in the code now? And you might end up with a good discussion. You may get some change. You may not, but that's the nature of democracy, isn't it?
It is.
And one other thing real quickly is, in the code too, one of the last chapters is the land development regulations. So that's where you can, a lot of times the hottest disputes at city commission meetings are land use cases.
Right.
Well, you can go to the land development regulations and read about what a PD is, or what a
plan development,
or what uses are allowed under a certain zoning classification, or what the setback is between homes in a certain area or whatever. And that's where you do your research there.
Right. I mean, it's like going to the library for the city. I mean, if you used to go through the, those table of contents or those library cards and do your own research. The same thing. If you want to learn about your city and municipal law, it would take some time, I would imagine, but your answers are there. Your answers
right at your desk in your home.
And that's right. You don't have to go to City Hall. You can actually, in the comfort of your own home, learn about our city ordinances.
That's exactly right. And if there's any issues, always call the city clerk. If there's issues about using the website, if there's issues about what's on the website, Municode, or the city clerks for that matter. But the city clerk and the city attorney are assigned by the city code to be the code codifiers.
Okay.
So it's our job to keep the code
Codified,
accurate and updated,
Okay.
and make editorial changes as need be, and the like. And we all, when I say editorial changes, staff cannot make substantive changes. We can't change 30 miles an hour to 25 miles
Right.
an hour. But if a code says him or he all the way through, we can go in and make it gender neutral.
Okay.
If a law has been found unconstitutional, we can go in and strike it out
Okay.
of the code.
Now that's because the commission or the city clerk and the attorney are both positions that are, and the city manager.
And that's done in conjunction with the city manager. That's the way the language is written. It's
Right.
three. It's a
Constitutional officers,
it's
right?
3 constitutional officers, and there's a check on each of us. Now, there's a famous case, and I won't name the city, and it's not in this county, where a city commissioner or mayor, I forgot who it was, got into a lot of trouble because he went to the clerk's office and looked at the zoning of some property he was interested in or owned, and he didn't like it. So he just got a colored pencil, and colored the map to be the color he wanted it to be, sort of rezoned it on his own.
That's a
that
no-no.
can't happen.
No way.
And even our editorial changes, like I just described, that takes the city clerk and the city attorney agreeing and also coordinating that with the city manager. There's no way somebody can just say,
Yeah.
I'm going to pull a fast one on everybody
Yeah.
and change the code on my own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is all great information and the basis of everything in municipal government. And Lonnie, you sure have experience. I know you've been the city attorney and practicing law since,
Good
can I
Lord.
say the
Close to
age?
50 years now. Close to
Okay.
50
No,
years.
more than that. And you're retiring soon in a couple of weeks.
Yep,
and
yep.
so we're glad we have you on this episode to share your
It was
knowledge
my pleasure.
and your expertise about the city code.
My
and
pleasure. You do a great job making sure the city's story is told in faraway places.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lonnie. Is there any last words that you want to share with people? Like, run to your computers and look up some code and learn about it, right?
Well, if you're interested, it's there if you're interested.
Right.
But I think the point that you and I make constantly, and we're kindred spirits in this, is be interested, because government without citizen involvement is a pretty dull and uninspired and somewhat meaningless thing. Because
Right.
if you're not hearing from citizens, then
Yeah.
who are the electorate, who are the sovereign, that's the sovereign. The citizens are the sovereign. So a knowledgeable citizen is a good citizen.
And I also always say that in our Citizens Academy, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
And hashtag knowledge is power. But also it's local government. And local government is where you can, they say it's the rubber meets the road here. You can come in and speak to your elected
That's
officials,
exactly right.
and you can be as involved as you would like to be,
No, you're right. And it's a big difference. We're sort of getting off the subject. But that's good. This is the reason for the subject. There's a big difference in coming into a meeting and saying, don't do this because I don't like it, or do this because I like it, as opposed to don't do this because X, Y, Z.
Right.
Or I really think this is a great idea to do because it will do X, Y, Z. Having reasons behind your position means a lot, because it's easy to say I don't like,
Right.
or I do like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, great legal advice from our assistant city attorney, Lonnie Groot. This is Lisa Holder, Communications Officer for the City of Sanford. Thank you for listening to this episode of Sanford Says. And you can find this podcast wherever you subscribe to your favorite podcast and on the city website at sanfordfl.gov. Thank you again. Lonnie, have a nice retirement.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Until next time, have a great day. Bye-bye.